The first one?
0.752 with a plus or minus of 0.006.
Okay, how'd you get the 0.752?
Well, I took the two of them and I added together and divided by 2. And that gave me 0.752.
Perfect. We add them together, divide by 2, that gives us 0.752. That is the average. That's the middle between them. That is our desired value. Assuming that this is a bilateral tolerance. In other words, that both, plus or minuses are the same, right?
And the other part, I took 0.758, minus 0.752, that gave me 0.006.
Okay. To get the allowance, you subtract them, 0.758 minus 0.746, and divide by 2, which does give us plus or minus 6,000ths of an inch. So for this one,
actually doesn't give you it gives you twice that amount, but then you got to cut it in half. Yeah.
That's why that's the divide by 2 right here.
Right. Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
I felt my tower dimensions.
That's okay. Down here to find the range, it's 1.210 minus 0.008, which is 1.202, to 1.210 plus. So there you go, 1.218 inches. So now this one. How do we handle the plus or minus 0.8%? Well, 0.8% is 0.8 over 100. How much is that out of 0.500? Yep, I'll slow down for you. So we cross multiply and divide. So it is 0.8 times 0.5 divided by 100. 0.004. So this is 5,000ths of an inch, or 500,000ths of an inch, plus or minus 0.004 inches.
Now, can't you also just move decimal places 2 points to the left?
And multiply by 0.008?
Right.
That works. That does it. That'll work, yep. So now today, we want to look at something that we'll look at more next semester for you guys in your applied physical science class, because we're going to do some electricity in there. But for those who don't do applied physical science, this might be their only exposure to it, and that is the resistor color code. The first step in doing the resistor color code is remembering the order of the colors. The colors are BB. Which one's first? It is black, brown.
Gold.
Isn't it brown, black? Brown, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, gold, silver, none.
Way too many wires here.
There they are.
None. I like none.
So there's numbers associated with each of these. Black is 0. The brown does not have a number associated with it in the first round. Red is, no, brown is 1, isn't it? Red is 2, orange 3, yellow 4, green 5, blue 6, violet 7, gray 8, and white is 9. Gold, silver, and none are what we call tolerance bands. Gold is a plus or minus 5%. Silver is plus or minus 10%. And if there is no tolerance bands, it is plus or minus 20%. if you got military grade resistors, you could have a brown or red tolerance band.
We need
No.
to know this.
What's that?
We need to know military grade stuff.
You might see a brown or a red.
Okay.
I may have mentioned this when we talked about threading and stuff like that. Military contracts, you always hear the thing about a hammer that costs, $500 or a bolt that costs, $50, whatever. Same with resistors. When they produce resistors, and I'm not going to go into the structure of the resistor itself, but the production of the resistors, they really don't do anything special to control the tolerance of that resistor. I mean, they produce them and then they test them. So they take a resistor, if it's supposed to be 2,000 ohms of resistance. They produce a batch of resistors, and then they test each of them. If this one was within 1%, they mark it as a 1%. If it's within 2%, they mark it within 2%. It's not really a precise thing. I mean, there's some companies that are better at it than others at making them in a smaller range. But let's say the military orders resistors, and they need them to be plus or minus 1%. They need their stuff to operate tip-top shape. Your life's in danger. You don't want something to fail because the resistance is too far off, so that it heats up or something like that. So they might order 1,000 resistors at plus or minus 1%.
They must use those like the Air Force.
Yeah.
They with that shit in the Army.
Yeah, well, Air Force, you're in an airplane,
Right,
you're in something that doesn't coast the ground. You're basically on a projectile with fins. It's not, you don't coast gently to the ground if that engine fails. So, yeah, so to get 1,000 of them, they may have to produce 50,000. Well, guess what? The military is going to pay for all 50,000. In fact, I think we mentioned it before, most companies that do military contract lose money on the military contracts. They don't, but the problem is once they have fulfilled the military contract, they have the 49,000 leftover parts that didn't make military specs. They make their profit on the secondary market, turning around and selling those. They're military rejects, but they're more than high enough. They're most likely higher quality than what you would buy on the regular market. So they're still selling very high quality stuff that just doesn't meet military specs, and that's where their profit is. So a lot of people talk about the big military contracts and the companies getting rich off of them. They're not getting rich off the military contract. They're getting rich selling the rejects. Not saying they don't make a ton of money, because they do, but for different reasons than what we've always thought. So pretend this is a resistor. Starting on the one end, we're going to have 3 bands. So we've got red, green, red, and silver. Notice the 4th band is a little bit further away from the other 3. That's because the 4th band is always a tolerance band. Now, each of the first 3 stand for numbers. What's red stand for?
Red is
2. Green is 5, and of course the red is 2. That does not mean 252. The first 2 numbers are actually numbers. 2, 5. The 2 is a power of 10. 10 squared is 100. In other words, 2 zeros. Right? So that's saying it's 2,500 ohms. That little upside down horseshoe thing is a symbol for ohms. Silver is plus or minus 10%. Silver's 10. Gold's 5. How about this one? No, first one's orange. That's a what? Orange is 3. Green is 5. Yellow is 4. So that's 4 zeros. 10 to the 4th, right? Or 4 zeros. So that's 350,000 ohms. Plus or minus? There's no tolerance band there. What does that mean? 20%. That would be none.
None is
Oh.
yeah, none didn't forget you.
That's silver, by the way. This is violet. What's violet?
7,
7. What's green?
5,
5. What's red?
2,
2.
7500.
7,500 ohms. Cool.
So whatever the last one is, if it's 2, like, or if it's like 5, it'd be 5 zeros.
Yep.
Okay. That's cool.
It's yellow. That one's gold. Yeah, last one's gold.
Yeah, right.
Yellow is 4. Red is
2,
2. Orange is
3,
No, yellow is 5.
yellow is 4.
0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yellow is
Green is 5. So it's 42,000 ohms plus or minus. That's gold. 5%. I don't have a gold, so I gotta use yellow. We're color deprived. Now, this implies a range.
oh, now you're starting to question.
Back up here, this was 2,500 plus or minus 10%. What is 10% of 2,500? Cross multiply and divide, we do get 250. So that means we have a lower end of 2,500 minus 250, which is 2,250 ohms, up to an upper end, which is 2,500 plus 250, 2,750. So down here, first step to finding that range is to find the plus or minus. So we have to find 20% of 350,000. Cross multiply and divide gives us 70,000. So what is our lower end of the range?
280.
Where'd 280,000 come from?
Subtracting 70,000
Yeah, 350,000 minus the 70,000. 2, 420,000. Where'd that come from? Yeah, 350 plus 70,000. So that resistor, now look at that. That seems like a horrific range. 280,000 to 420,000. That's huge. But that's still usable in most applications of resistors. That's why you very seldom see resistors just used in series as a resistor. They're used in bridges and stuff like that. So that the precision of the resistor isn't as important as the ratio between resistors. So how about this one? In your notes, I want you to figure out what the range that's implied there is. Technically, the omega is the last letter of the Greek alphabet, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, that's the range here.
6750.
Perfect. 6,750 ohms to 8,250 ohms. Again, that seems like a huge range, but it's acceptable. Try this one quick. What'd you get?
41,790 to 42,210.
Something seems off there. That sounds better. 5% of 42,000 is 2,100. I think you win an extra. You got 210, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's go the other way. Let's say that you have a resistor that is listed as 61,000 ohms plus or minus 20%. Color code that one for me. What's the first color going to be? 6 would be blue. I'm just going to be 1 would be brown.
3
Orange. And what's the fourth band? There won't be a fourth band because it's 20%. Good. Has about so what's it going to be?
Gray, red, red, space, silver.
Gray for 8, red for 2, red for 2 more zeros, silver. Okay. How's about this one? What do you got to do first?
Yellow, green.
Well, what do we got to do before we do it? Let's get all the information here. We've got to find out what percent 9,000 is of 45,000. When we cross multiply and divide, we're going to get what? 20. Right? Everybody see where the 20 came from? Okay, so 4 is yellow. Green is 5. And then the 3 zeros is orange. And then for tolerance, nothing. So in your notes, color code. Color code that for me. Okay, so first step is we got to find the plus or minus percent. It's going to be what?
120,000 divided by 6,000 gives you 20%.
Other way around, 6,000 over 120 equals, this time it would have actually come out either way. Just got to be careful. So 6,000 times 100 divided by 120,000 is 20. So this is plus or minus, not 20. No, it's not 20.
5.
It's 5. There we go. Plus or minus 5%. So as we color code this, the first one is brown for the 1, red for the 2, and then yellow for 4 zeros, and then gold tolerance.
Oh, that's okay. We didn't talk about that.
Well, what?
What, how you, there's only 2 colors, like how you, I did brown, or brown, red, black, and then orange because it's
Because 0 and black.
Yeah.
And then I did, so I had 4 different colors.
First 2 numbers.
Well, you can only have 3 for. You can only use 2 numbers and then all the zeros. Yeah. So you can't do brown, red, black, and then orange. No. Only have 3 bands and then the tolerance.
So, when like looking at resistors on like a computer, like when you tear them apart, is that the little colors in each slot of them and whatnot?
Yes, those are.
Okay, Okay, that makes sense then. I always looked at them and thought I want to smash
So,
with a hammer.
how do you know whether to multiply or divide?
What do you mean?
So I did 120,000 times 6,000 divided by 100.
It's always your percent over 100, right? That part's always known. And then the tolerance is always the percent. So the 6,000 is the plus or minus. So that's got to go with our missing percent. And the 120,000 is your base. So that's going to go down here. So it's always cross, multiply, and divide. So the two that are diagonal from each other get multiplied, then you divide by the other one. Okay, I gotta try this again. I had brain freeze there for a second. I'm getting old. I get distracted and I lose it, so I gotta start over. So anyway, let's try this again. So let's say we're given that we need a resistor that falls within this range. We need to find, first of all, we need to find our rating for the resistor, and then let's color code it. This goes back to doing our tolerances stuff. What's our desired value? 5760 plus 7040 divided by 2 gives us 6,400 ohms. What's that? What'd you get?
I screwed that up.
Make sure you hit equals before you divide by 2 always. 6,400 is what I'm getting. Now you're going to take the 7040 minus 5760 divided by 2, which is going to give us the plus or minus 640 ohms. So then our next step is to find out blank over 100 is 640 over 6,400. If we cross multiply and divide that, of course, we're going to come up with 10%. You look confused? A little? Okay. It'll come? Okay.
So it's always a tolerance times 100.
I see it right now.
So we got 6,400 ohms plus or minus 10% here. So when we go to color code this, 6 is blue, 4 is yellow, and then 2 zeros is red, and then plus or minus 10% is silver. Let's maybe do another one of those.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go and see, you got a 60,000 ohm to 90,000 ohm potential range. So let's find the desired value. We're going to take 60,000 plus 90,000 divided by 2 is 75,000 ohms. That's our desired value. To find our allowance, it'll be 90,000 minus 60,000 divided by 2 is 15,000. So what that's saying is that this is 75,000 ohms plus or minus 15,000 ohms. And of course, next we need to convert the 15,000 ohms into a percent. So percent over 100 is we need blank over 100. What goes on top? 15,000 over 75,000. We're going to cross multiply. 100 times 15,000 is 1.5 million. Divided by 75,000 is 20. So this is 75,000 ohms plus or minus 20%. Questions at this juncture? Seven is what color? 5 is green. 3 zeros, orange. Plus or minus 20? None. Your turn. Color code that. Okay, so for the desired value, 1200. Does everybody get 1200? Add them together, divide by 2, you get 1200. Again, make sure you hit equals before you divide by 2. Plus or minus 60. Subtract them and divide by 2. Again, hit equals before you divide by 2. And then, of course, 60 is what percent? 5%. Blank over 100 equals 60 over 1200. If we cross multiply and divide, we get 5. So the color code, wow, that's ugly. First number is 1, which is brown. Red for the 2. Then 2 zeros is red. And then gold tolerance band. You forgot to divide by 2.
Remember to use which numbers. Use like 1140 or something like that.
Yeah.
This is like,
Well, so that's why we got to convert it into this, because we need desired value in the percent.
What's the check thing you divide it again? Okay, that's right. That's the step I missed.
Okay.
Okay.
In your book, on page 203, I believe it's exercise 4.8, 1 through 41, the odds deal with all this happy stuff. Should be good things for you guys to do. Fun to be had by all. Have fun. I have resistors somewhere if you want to look at some. I'd have to go to the science lab and dig them out.